Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ROQUEFORT Therapeutics investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time using the Q&A tab on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your question at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today, and we'll publish those on the Investor Meet Company platform where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll, and if you could give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. I'd now like to hand over to Executive Chairman Stephen West. Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name's Steve West. I'm the chairman of ROQUEFORT Therapeutics. We are a material biotech company focused on next-generation cancer medicines. I'm joined here today by our CEO, Adjan Reginald, and Adjan will be running through our presentation today. And I think in particular, Adjan will be highlighting the rapid progress that we've made so far this year, which we're very excited about, very proud about. We've had several exciting R&D results. We've developed a potentially very high value mRNA platform. And we've also signed a strategic diagnostic license with Randox. We remain very much focused on delivering a transaction with Big Pharma, which I'm sure some of our loyal shareholders have heard us talk about before. And we'll be looking at delivering IND filings later on this year as well. So with that quick summary, I'll now hand over to Adjan, who can go through our presentation and our progress in more detail. Thanks, Adjan.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Adjan Reginald. I'm Chief Executive Officer of ROQUEFORT, and what I'd like to do is to take you through this brief presentation. We'll start off with a recap, a snapshot of ROQUEFORT, starting with its history. So the company was founded in 2020, acquired Lyramid, which was the source of the MidKine therapeutics that we'll talk about. So ROQUEFORT has the leading portfolio and intellectual property suite in the area of MidKine, which is a novel anti-cancer target. And then in September 2022, ROQUEFORT acquired Oncogene, and with that came two other families of innovative anti-cancer medicines. One was an siRNA, and the other a innovative cell therapy. And again, we'll talk through each of these in more detail. As Steve highlighted, in February this year, in 2023, we signed our first licensing deal, which was with Randox, which was for diagnostics that would help identify the key patients that have MidKine expressing tumors. And as we'll talk about, this type of diagnostic significantly increases the likelihood of patients being diagnosed, and therefore allows us to run faster trials, quicker trials, cheaper trials, and improves the likelihood of cancer medicines getting to market. The portfolios we've talked about includes 5 fully funded programs. So these are 5 programs whereby we have the funding to take them to the key inflection points. And I want to sort of stress that a little bit even in this introduction. So we have sufficient funding to take these programs to a point where we've created significant value. The rationale for ROQUEFORT Therapeutics is that we're able to identify breakthrough medicines very early. We do that because of our strong background and network, and also because of our expertise in bringing these type of medicines to market. What we then do is to develop these novel medicines in a way that they're packaged ready for Big Pharma or Big Biotech to acquire. And so the programs that we have, which are the orphan drug MidKine antibody program, the MidKine RNA therapeutic, and the MidKine mRNA, are programs that came from Lyramid and have been fully funded to get to that inflection point. And then the mesodermal killer cells and the siRNA, which we acquired through the acquisition of Oncogene, are also funded to get to that key inflection point. And those inflection points will vary, but typically what we're doing is we're taking very early innovation. We're doing the key experiments that demonstrate that these therapeutics have the ability to kill cancer and have the commercially interesting markets that Big Pharma and Big Biotech are looking for. And then we're packaging them in a way, doing the work that Big Pharma would expect to be done so that they're very easy for Big Pharma or Big Biotech companies to buy. The reason we can do that is because we have a leadership team which has got a significant track record in doing exactly this, taking early medicines from just a good idea into clinical trials and winning regulatory approvals in the US, in Europe, in other jurisdictions. Our Chief Scientific Officer, Professor Sir Martin Evans, won the Nobel Prize for his research, and I've been a biotech CEO for more than a decade. We have state-of-the-art laboratories and access to a biopharmaceutical GMP manufacturing facility. So, you know, in a snapshot, ROQUEFORT is well positioned to select early innovation and to develop it, because we have people and we have the facilities and the experience of doing that. Because of that, we think we can drive significant value potential, and we use data to demonstrate this. If you look at the average valuations of early clinical programs, so early programs that are just getting ready to go into the clinic, that have completed preclinical development, the average valuation was around $70 million between 2005 and 2020. We've got 5 of these programs, so we have, you know, multiple shots on goal, and as a consequence, we are positioned well in what is a very exciting market. You know, the oncology market is forecast to exceed $350 billion with a very fast growth rate of over 8%. Our strategy is to take this early innovation, to develop it, and then to out-license it. And that really fits the pharma paradigm. You know, biotech and pharma is well established in their different roles. So biotech companies like ours do that early development, prove that new medicines have effect in cancer, and then typically 90% of these companies license or are acquired by big pharma companies. So a quick rundown on the leadership team. Steve has already introduced himself a little bit, but Steve is a chartered accountant with, you know, over 25 years of experience in public markets and significant public and company expertise. He's got a proven track record with growing companies and experience in IPO secondary filings. Professor Sir Martin Evans is a very eminent scientist, Nobel Prize winner, and the scientist who identified stem cells. Martin works very closely with our research teams. Professor Armand Keating is our chief medical advisor. He's an independent, non-board member based in Toronto. And Armand is an eminent MD, PhD with significant experience in really the nuts and bolts of what we do. So he's an eminent scientist with a broad experience, but what really is critical for a company of our stage is that Armand has experience in taking early innovation and moving it through that preclinical development, moving it into the clinic. And he has an extremely specific expertise in cell and gene therapy, which is the area that we work in. Darren Disley is very famous and well-known entrepreneur for good reason. He's been very successful as CEO of Horizon Discovery for more than a decade and led that company from seed round to very high valuations, I believe in excess of 500 million. Another eminently qualified scientist with a PhD from the University of Cambridge, as well as a DSc from Salford. Mike Stein is based in Oxford, a former Rhodes Scholar, another MD, PhD with great experience in biotech and pharma and in small companies. So Mike has got a pedigree of working in a number of small companies which have successfully exited. Simon Sinclair is the former Chief Safety Officer at Reckitt Group, and again, an MD, PhD from Cambridge with a lot of expertise in taking early innovation into the clinic. And then Jean Duval is a non-executive director based in Switzerland, who is biotech CEO with a lot of experience at multiple companies and particular expertise in intellectual property. And I shouldn't forget myself, which I did last time. So I'm Ajay Reginald. I've got more than 20 years experience in biotech and pharma. I was global head of new technologies at Roche Group and also M&A director, so a deal maker with a track record of doing deals in biotech and pharma. And then during the pandemic, I worked at Novocyte, the diagnostic company, as chief operating officer and chief technical officer. I've taken a number of medicines from just an idea, including developing patents, through to the clinic, doing phase 1 and phase 2 trials. And my academic training is experimental medicine at the University of Oxford and then business at Harvard Business School and Kellogg, Northwestern. So a little bit about our strategy. And our focus is to find areas of high unmet need. And what we mean by that is areas where even in the 2020s, patients still have a poor prognosis. And sadly, there are many of these niches in cancer. So these are niches where even with modern medicine, patients have a poor prognosis. And we've highlighted some of those recently with metastatic breast cancer or metastatic osteosarcoma or liver disease. Mortality rates can be as high as 70%. So that means that only 30% of those patients are surviving at 5 years. So those are the areas that we believe that this new generation of medicines that either target a novel cancer marker like MIDKINE or use a cell and gene therapy can help patients. And by helping patients, then we can create a market niche, because ultimately cancer medicine is about trying to find the right medicine for the right cancer. And that great variety in cancers and patients allows for multiple market niches. Our expertise, our sweet spot, is taking this very early innovation and developing it in-house, and also with our network of very high quality cancer research centers around the world. We create value by developing these medicines. So we take them from a little more than a patent. We complete all the in vitro and in vivo studies to demonstrate to a potential pharma, a potential partner like a big pharma company like Roche or another company, that all the data is present there to show that these medicines have a high probability of working in phase 1, phase 2, and hopefully final stage trials. And then we utilize our expertise in our network to package them in a way, to present that data in a way that it's easy for big pharma or big biotech to understand. As I mentioned briefly at the beginning, this is the paradigm of biotech and pharma. Biotech's role is to do the early discovery and the early development of new medicines. And big pharma, which is very cash rich, is able to acquire these new products through licensing or by acquiring biotech companies. Therefore, our model is really to select this very early innovation, and then to do that work, that packaging, to create a high value product in a high value niche. As we said, oncology is the biggest, most interesting market, or most exciting market in biotech, with a very fast growth rate. And so we focus there within oncology in the areas where we believe we can create the biggest value for patients, and therefore create potentially first-in-class or best-in-class medicines. Interestingly, this is quite a sustainable business model. We've already got 5 products or classes of products that we're able to develop, and therefore our model now is to do licensing deals. Similar, Randox was an initial deal; it was a diagnostic deal, so it doesn't have the same magnitude as you'd expect from a pharma deal, but it did demonstrate that we're able to get off the ground quickly, and that we're able to do deals quickly. And our intention, as Steve mentioned, is to continue that this year and next year. A quick overview of where we were in H1 versus H2. If you remember, we only acquired Oncogene in Q4 of 2022. So 2022, the end of 22, was really about putting the foundations in place. In 2023, we've moved pretty quickly. So we've been able to complete the Randox deal. We've started discussions, multiple discussions with Big Pharma. We've developed our R&D programs at these distinguished institutes around the world: the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Research Centre, the Lowry Cancer Institute, University of Sydney, University of Toronto, La Trobe University. And what we've been able to do in all of those centres is move programs quickly forward. So in H2, what we've been able to already demonstrate is that the antibodies have completed in vivo studies and been able to demonstrate efficacy in osteosarcoma. And we'll talk a little bit about the significance of osteosarcoma and the significance of an orphan drug indication in a moment. But I just wanted to just re-stress that what we've been able to do is complete the work with the antibodies, so we can demonstrate that the antibody therapeutics kill cancer in a hard to treat cancer. In particular, osteosarcoma is difficult to treat because metastases, that's when the cancer spreads to distant sites. Sadly, this affects children, and this really is our niche, this area where we're trying to treat patients that are currently very poorly treated by existing medicines, and that's a very high value niche. The mRNA, as Steve mentioned, is very exciting. We all learned about mRNA technology during COVID, but mRNA was not originally designed for vaccines. It was originally designed as an anti-cancer therapeutic. And BioNTech and Moderna have been working on this technology for over a decade. According to forecasts, there's only about a dozen companies in this field. So I think we're very privileged to be a very small company in this field, in this sort of rare field of mRNA in cancer. And we've been able to demonstrate in both liver and breast cancer that our mRNA has efficacy, so has the ability to kill cancer cells. We also have the oligonucleotide, another RNA-based approach, which we've been able to show, again, efficacy in difficult to treat cancers. And then with our siRNA and our MK cells, we already had in vivo efficacy. So what in vivo efficacy means is in a living model, we're able to demonstrate that we're able to kill cancer cells. So we had that early on, and now we're doing that final packaging. So putting the siRNA into a package where it can be delivered safely to patients. And similarly with the MK cells, we're trying to advance it into immunotherapy, which is a very exciting area in that cancer niche, which is fast growing and high valued. We'll spend a little bit more time going through each of these programs in turn. But in summary, our R&D progress has been good. It's been a typical biotech year so far in terms of being able to move things forward quickly, but of course we have to overcome hurdles along the way. And so the team has done a great job in navigating some of these hurdles. And as we see, the mid-kind antibody program has progressed to where we wanted it to get to. The oligo program is on track. The siRNA program is just about on track, and the MK cell therapy and the mRNA are looking to complete at the end of this year. So just spend a little bit of time on the mid-kind antibodies. So an antibody is a very specific type of medicine. So it's a medicine that binds to a particular marker on the surface of a cancer cell, and that binding either kills the cancer or blocks the receptor on the cancer that then leads to the cancer dying. And that's what we've been able to demonstrate. What we've been able to demonstrate with our two antibodies, CAB101 and CAB102, in a validated model, which means in a model that people believe represents what the medicine might do in human trials, is that we're able to both reduce metastases. So we're able to reduce the spread of the cancer to the lungs, but we're also able to reduce the size of the primary cancer, so the osteosarcoma, which is a bone cancer. And this is very important because osteosarcoma is the most common form of bone cancer. It's still an orphan disease, which means it affects less than 200,000 people in the US and about the same number of people in Europe. Sadly, this is often young people, children, and often that leads to, with metastases, a very high mortality rate. As a consequence, this is a disease which is incentivized by something called the Orphan Drug Scheme. And that's a sort of worldwide scheme that's regulated by the government that incentivizes pharmaceutical companies to develop medicines for these very hard to treat rare diseases. And the commercial incentives are quite significant. In the US and Europe, you get market exclusivity. That means that no other medicine will be approved for the combination of this type of drug in this particular indication. So if this antibody program were to go forward and to win approval, then no other treatment of this same class would be approved in the US for 7 years and Europe for 10 years. Obviously, that market exclusivity is highly commercially valuable. But in addition to that, you also get a tax credit on clinical trials and a significant reduction in fees. So this is a great example of where if you can help these patients that have a very poor prognosis in a very difficult to treat disease, it also makes good business. There is a commercially viable business plan if you can find the right medicine that can benefit these patients. Because we have developed biomarkers and because orphan drugs are a very defined market, the data shows that these types of medicines also have a higher success rate. So they're more successful in clinical trials. And the cost of trials is much smaller because of the trial size. And typically these medicines can go from an initial trial to an approval in about 5.5 years. So there's a lot of benefits in looking at an orphan disease, and in particular this orphan disease, osteosarcoma, which, as I mentioned, affects young people and children. I think is something which is great that we're able to develop something that could potentially help these patients. The MidKine oligonucleotide program. So this is a program where we've been able to demonstrate in the lab that our family of RNA therapeutics, there's 4 of them, we're able to reduce MidKine in breast cancer and in liver cancer. So what that means is in a model of breast cancer and liver cancer, you would expect to see a very high growth of cells. When you treat in the laboratory those breast cancer cells and liver cancer cells with our RNA, what you're able to see is a very dramatic drop in the number of cells and cancer death. And this is particularly interesting because those are very difficult to treat cancers, and in particular patients that express MidKine have a much lower survival rate. And again, this is a very high value niche within cancer. As Steve mentioned, our latest therapeutic is this MidKine mRNA. So mRNA, as I mentioned earlier, was originally designed to look at cancer, and we're in this very small group of companies developing mRNA for cancer therapy. What we're able to do with our proprietary mRNA, so we've been able to file patents that protect the composition of matter of this mRNA, is demonstrate in laboratory experiments that we're able to, again, kill breast cancer cells and liver cancer cells. We've picked this particular market because metastatic breast cancer and liver cancer are very hard to treat. And mRNA may be an alternative to the other medicines that have been tried already that don't have a very profound effect. I think that reiterates our sort of strategy, which is where there is an existing medicine that treats the cancer very well, we won't go into that market. We're really trying to help patients that have a very poor prognosis with existing therapies, and where we think our innovative new medicines like mRNA, like oligos, like antibodies for a novel target may be able to benefit these patients. Obviously, because these 3 programs, the antibody program, the oligo program, and the mRNA program, target MidKine, we're able to drive a lot of synergies. We're able to use a complementary approach, which means we can reduce cost and be much more efficient and faster in our development. Finally, just to give you a sense, the mRNA field is a hot field. It's very attractive. It's worth over $30 billion already, and it's growing at nearly an 8% CAGR. So it's really one of the most exciting new areas within biotech and attracting a lot of attention, as you'll see from some of the deals already done with Moderna and Merck and Pfizer and BioNTech. The siRNA. So this is one of the programs that came from Oncogene and had already demonstrated in vivo efficacy. So in an animal model, it had already been able to demonstrate the ability to kill colon cancer in a validated animal model. What we're doing now with this therapy is we're combining it with a delivery system called a lipid nanoparticle, an LNP. And what we're trying to do there is to make it more durable and therefore have a longer lasting and a more targeted effect on colon cancer. We're expecting that work to be done this quarter and to be able to report that in due course. And then finally, with the MK cell therapy. MK is very exciting because it's in this area of using cells to kill cancer. We've had some enormous improvements in cancer medicine as a consequence of the first generation of these cells. And now the second generation, which is called natural killer cells, NK cells, is the hot field that with lots of clinical trials ongoing. The problem with natural killer cells is that they don't have enough potency. So they don't kill cancer a higher rate as other medicines. However, the good thing is they're well tolerated with a lower risk of side effects. So what we've engineered is our own cell therapy, which can increase the potency, so increase the killing rate of natural killer cells, as well as kill cancers themselves. We've been able to demonstrate that in the lab. And what we're doing now is looking at natural killer cells that are already into clinical trials. So natural killer cells that are closer to market and where we can add value with our cell therapies. Again, this is work that's ongoing, and we're expecting to report that in due course. So I've gone through that at a little bit of pace, but I'll reiterate. So we're a material biotech company. We've got 5 programs that we're developing. We've delivered results as promised in our 3 mid-kind programs, and we've also completed the commercial license with Randox. Our other programs are also on track to deliver results this year. We've developed partnerships with leading academic cancer research centers around the world, which complements our own world-class in-house laboratory expertise and allows us the flexibility to be able to do this very efficient and synergistic development model. We spent 2022 and the beginning of this year establishing the foundations, putting the team in place, and now we've really hit the road running, and we're developing all of these 5 R&D programs, which again I'd like to stress are fully funded to what we believe is that next key inflection point. The model of the company, as we've mentioned, is to find this early innovation and then to generate value by delivering the data packages, by putting the products in a format that Big Pharma understands, so that we can then do licensing or sale transactions. We've had a major breakthrough in developing the new class of mRNA, which is the anti-midkine, anti-cancer mRNA, which could potentially be a game changer for the company, but also for the treatment of those patients that have these very difficult to treat cancers that express midkine. If you remember, through our partnership with Randox, we can identify these patients. So we already know that patients that have solid tumors, so breast cancer, lung cancer, prostate, pancreas, liver cancer, and have high expression, and with these cancers express the midkine protein, are the patients that have the poor prognosis. So the combination of our partnership with Randox to find these patients and our targeted therapeutics, I think, can change the way that this class of patient, this type of patient, is treated. We have some very near-term inflection points. We're in active discussions with multiple partners now, and we're delivering R&D results, as you've seen, all through this quarter and next quarter. We expect to have at least 1 product, if not more than 1, ready for IND. But in the meantime, as I mentioned, the licensing and sale conversations are ongoing. So I will pause there and perhaps ask Steve to jump in.
That's great. That's great. Let me give you a couple of moments. So thank you very much indeed for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the guys take a few moments to review your questions submitted already, I'd just like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, will be accessible via the Investment Company platform. Stephen, if I may just ask you to open up the Q&A tab, and you'll see a number of questions from investors throughout the presentation this morning. And thank you to everybody for your engagement. If I could, Stephen, just ask you to read out the questions and, of course, give responses where it's appropriate to do so.
Sure. Great. Thank you. So moving straight to the questions. So there's a few questions here. I'll read them out, and then either Ajahn or both of us will do our best to answer them. So a question here from Dominic. There are so many companies with preclinical treatments in their pipelines. You were talking about some conversations you are having with potential partners. What would make the big pharma more interested in your company than others? Good question. Probably one for you, Ajahn.
Yeah, it's a really reasonable question, Dominic. I think it goes back to our core strategy. I think there are lots of programs in preclinical development, but the areas that are hot at the moment are cancer, oncology, and immunology, and in particular the intersection of those two, which is called immuno-oncology. So first of all, we're playing in the right area. Number two, we are playing in that right area with the right tools. So we're in that area with breakthrough medicines, with cell and gene therapies. Big pharma don't have a lot of expertise of cell and gene therapy, so they're always looking for small companies with that deep expertise. You can't really get much deeper expertise than Sir Martin, who won the Nobel Prize for his work in cell therapies. So I think that's the second thing that makes us particularly interesting. And then number three, as I mentioned to you, because we come from big pharma, we know what big pharma are looking for. We know how to do the experiments, we know how to present the data, and we know how to cover the things that big pharma are looking for. And I think someone else asked this question further down. We have composition of matter IP, we have low cost of goods, we're in the markets that are important. So we're in the high growth markets, we're in the high growth niches in oncology where there is high unmet need with a breakthrough technology that is patented. So it's really what pharma is looking for. That's what distinguishes us.
Thanks, Jen. Another question here from Michael. What do you expect to spend over the next 12 months on R&D? And secondly, does AI play any role in this? I'll answer the first part of that, and I'll pass over to Ajahn for the second part. So what do we plan to spend? Very simple question. Unfortunately, I can't give you a simple answer. Or we're kind of limited to what's in the market already. So what I can say is we've just published our annual results recently. We had £2.3 million of cash at the end of last year, and we're fully funded, as Ajahn mentioned during the presentation, to get all our 5 programs to IND level. So we're fully funded. I think that's probably the key thing to note there. We also run things in a very efficient manner. We have partnerships with various organisations around the world, mainly in Australia, for the mid-kind work. And down in Australia, we get a 43.5% cash rebate from the Australian government as well. So we are able to achieve a lot in terms of R&D results, which we've outlined today, a fairly minimal cost. So low cost, high returns is what we're aiming for here.
Yeah.
And then maybe over to you, Ajahn, for the AI question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good summary. I think the other part of it would be that we have a lot of in-house expertise. If you look at R&D spend in typical biotech companies, a lot of that is external consulting, where they're going out to, because they're not expert, they're going out and saying, how should we do this in vivo study, or how should we do this in vitro study? So a lot of it is having that in-house expertise, which both reduces your costs and increases your speed. And then, machine learning AI we've used particularly for the mRNA. So in the design of the mRNA and the oligos, we use machine learning to optimally design those sequences. And the results of that are demonstrated by the fact that we're able to show the efficacy results that we're getting now.
Thanks, Ajahn. Question from Dominic. Do you have a preferred exit strategy? And is it a JV route or selling whole company to a larger player? I guess it's over to you, Ajahn, for that.
I think we would look at what's the most value optimizing for shareholders. I think if you have something, in the way biotech typically works is if you have something that's super valuable, then you have lots of bidders. When you're in that bidding situation that I've been in, you can negotiate terms which I think are value optimizing. In this market, you see a lot of acquisitions. At the moment, big pharma is very, very cash rich. Their preferred methodology, if they can, is to have a nice clean acquisition of everything with the IP. They'll do licensing deals if they think that the partner can add a lot of value in a particular area, or if the cost of acquisition is very, very high. So I think, as we are in these live discussions, hopefully we'll get multiple types of deals, and I suppose all we can say as a board is that we will look to maximize value for shareholders.
Great, thanks, Ajahn. Question from Chris, which we partly answered, but we could probably elaborate on. How well protected are you from a patent or patents perspective? I'd say, in summary, very well protected, but over to you, Ajahn, for a bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, typically in the pharma, not even typically, absolutely in the pharma world, composition of matter patents are king. What that means is you must own the compositions. You must, for an RNA sequence, you want to actually patent the actual sequence, the actual code. For an antibody, you want to be able to patent the actual composition of the antibody, and that's what we do. So we have composition of matter that protects each and all of our different programs. And as I mentioned, we have a number of programs. We have 5 core technologies, and within those we have multiple individual programs, all of which are patented.
Great, thank you. Question here from Claire. Noting Roquefort is very good at engaging with the markets, but as we head into the summer period and as liquidity falls in the markets, particularly over the last 3 months for SME companies, what main things do we have on the horizon for Q3 to look out for? Over to you, Ajahn. I mean, obviously it's further R&D results and hopefully some progress with Big Pharma, but I'll get you to add a bit of meat to that answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the 3 core things are exactly that. I think our stated goal was to have at least 1 program IND ready by the end of the year, and we're on track to do that. So that'll be one thing. The second thing is, in the meantime, we have multiple programs, all of which are doing well, and all of which are delivering results, as you can see from our summary. So expect more high quality results, and those high quality results touch on number 3, which is those results bring in inquiries. So a lot of our work is because big pharma companies, big biotech are approaching us and saying, we're very interested in this program for this indication. What data have you got? And that's how this works. The reason we publicize our results is, 1, because we have to, they're material. And therefore, as a public company, we have to, when we get results that are material for each of our programs, we have to put that news out. The second reason is because that's a very objective way of demonstrating to Big Pharma that these are the results that we're producing. And as a consequence of that, it allows us to have a 2-way flow. We're at meetings, we're at conferences, but also we're fielding inquiries from pharma companies. So that's really the 3 things. We will deliver what we promised, which will have a program IND ready. You'll see lots of results from the programs that we've got highlighted here, which will be over the next quarter. And we're in active discussions with multiple pharma companies for licensing deals.
Thanks, Ajahn. Question here from Devik. Seeing that your current share price and market capitalization is undervalued comparatively to other biotech pharma companies, what is Roquefort doing in the near to midterm, to achieve higher valuation targets? I guess we've kind of covered that in the previous answer. However, I guess in summary, we're going to continue doing what we're doing. I mean, we've been quite clear to the market on what we are striving to achieve this year. We're very proud. I'm very proud of the team that we've actually delivered everything that we said we would so far this year. We're looking to continue doing that. And we're also looking to deliver a deal with a big pharma, which will be very easy for the market to value. I think that's where we should be able to see a more realistic value put on our share price, because as you're kind of alluding to, Devik, it is a very low market cap compared to the programs we have and the upside that we have. So I think as we continue to deliver on our milestones, we should see that coming through in a lot higher value. Anything to add to that, Ajahn?
Only to say, Devik, I think we wholeheartedly agree with you that we're undervalued, but I'm not sure that's compared to other biotech companies. That most biotech companies are, particularly in NASDAQ, are trading below cash. And there are companies that are trading at a fraction of cash. That's sort of NASDAQ perspective. In the UK, biotech companies are typically trading pretty poorly as well this year. That's just a reflection of market sentiment at the moment. Luckily for us, big pharma don't typically look at that sort of thing, and licensing deals tend to be independent of market cap.
Thanks, Ajahn. Question here from Emily. The previous slide, which I think is the slide that's up now, seems to show IND CTA readiness for the siRNA targeting novel STAT6 in solid tumours. Any update you can share with investors about this? That's definitely one for you, Ajahn.
Yeah, just to reiterate, Emily, with the siRNA, we already had in vivo data. What we're doing now is we're looking at multiple LNP formulations. So we're looking at multiple delivery vehicles. If one or more of those pays off, then yes, the siRNA will be in a good position for us to move forward.
Thanks, Ajahn. A couple of questions here from Dominic, which I'll amalgamate into one. Which of your programs attracts the most interest from potential partners? Or in other words, which program is closest to a potential licensing deal? I guess we need to be fairly careful how we answer that. But I mean, there's a program on the slide here which certainly stands out as being more advanced. I don't know if you want to add a bit of colour to that, Ajahn.
Yeah, Dominic, what I'd say to you is we're fortunate that most big pharma is flush with cash, and also most big pharma is facing a patent cliff. What I mean by that is most big pharma has products that are generating billions of dollars currently that are going to go off patent in the next 5 to 7 years. So we're in this very unique period of time where big pharma has huge amounts of money to spend and needs to spend it to replenish their pipeline. Also, big pharma companies tend to be quite sophisticated in terms of their strategic focus. So there are many companies that focus in oncology, and we're talking to them about particular programs. But we've also got other companies that are interested in specific cancers that we are targeting, and so across all the large pharma companies, that's probably close to 100. There are different companies invested in different programs. There are a reasonable number of companies that are interested in all the programs, but most typically have an interest in one or two.
Great, thanks, Ajahn. So next question, is there any diagnostics approach to any of the solutions currently pursued? I guess this is asking, well, I guess the answer to this is the diagnostic license we signed with Randox and the strategic importance of that. I think from my point of view, which is a very high level, it's not as detailed as Ajahn, I think it's a huge development for us because it demonstrates that midkine can be used as a indicator for cancer, which is what Randox are using it for. It also helps with our studies going forward as well. It's actually a huge stride forward for us, high level. Probably a bit more detail from you on that, Ajahn.
No, I think you got it. Midkine's a biomarker, and as a consequence, it's very helpful in being able to diagnose the patients that have cancers that express midkine. So for our midkine therapeutics, so the antibody, the oligo, and the mRNA, you're targeting solid cancers. So solid tumors like breast cancer, prostate, liver, that express midkine. The diagnostic allows you to diagnose those patients. But secondly, we know those patients have a poor prognosis. So the medical data shows that patients with those particular types of cancer that express midkine have a poor prognosis. So you're also, secondly, able to recruit those patients more quickly into clinical trials, reduce the size of your clinical trial. And again, the sort of clinical trial data shows you that medicines that have a companion diagnostic, so a diagnostic like the one we've got, have a much higher rate of success in clinical trials. So a very short answer to your question, which is yes, we have a very strong diagnostic program which runs in parallel with our therapeutics.
Thanks, Adrian. Question here from Jordan. How likely are we to get some undilutive funding? Also, what sort of figure could you expect? Very good question. I mean, one of the underlying reasons why we're targeting a deal with Big Pharma this year is to access some funding which is non-dilutive for shareholders, and that's absolutely our target to do this year. It's hard. Your second part of your question is harder for me to answer in terms of the quantum we expect. However, it should be sufficient for us. The minimum figure we're targeting should be sufficient for us as a company, such that we won't need to go out and raise additional diluted capital. So I guess that's where you're getting at with that question. So hopefully I've answered that well enough. Question here from Dominic. There were several companies recently complaining about the London Stock Exchange, or even the UK as a country, is not the best environment for biotech companies. Some of them are looking to move over to US or having a double listing with the US. What is your opinion? Well, firstly, I'd say I don't think it's just limited to biotech, but obviously biotech's more relevant for us. I think in general, the UK market, even the European market, has performed a lot less well than the US market, equity market. I think for us being a UK company, I think London Stock Exchange is the right place for us at the moment, particularly with our size. I think as we deliver on our milestones and we see our valuation increase, we'd certainly be looking at potentially a double listing in the US, where there seems to be a lot more knowledgeable investors, biotech knowledgeable investors, and very specific companies or funds that specifically invest in biotech and understand the significance of the science that companies like ours are developing. Question from Jordan: what is the company headcount? I like questions like that. It's a very easy question to answer. But we have five people at the moment. But interestingly, one of those is down in Australia, and the Australian government pays for nearly half of his cost. So we run a very tight ship, as we mentioned earlier, and that's why we have a relatively small but very experienced headcount. And I think that is it in terms of questions. Thank you, everyone.
You've got that. Thank you very much indeed to both of you for your time for the Q&A this morning. Adrian, Stephen, I know investor feedback is important to you both, and I'll shortly redirect those on the call to give you their thoughts and expectations. But perhaps, Adrian, I can come back to you just to ask you for a few closing comments just to wrap up with, and then I'll send investors to give you their feedback.
Great, thank you, and thank you for those questions and well wishes in the Q&A chat. So to reiterate, Roquefort is a material biotech company with 5 really exciting, innovative programs in development which target the most difficult to treat cancers. Genuinely, these treatments are for patients that even with modern medicine have a very, very poor prognosis. And I think we're all excited that we can move medicines forward to hopefully help these patients. As I mentioned, fortunately, that also makes good business. These are the key areas where there is significant interest from big pharma companies to license and to acquire products to fill their pipeline. And that's our model. Our model is to identify that early innovation and then to develop it as best that anyone can, so that it's ready for big pharma to then take into clinical trials. We've got multiple near-term inflection points that you should expect to see this coming quarter, which will be focused on the 3 areas that, again, we've outlined. That we'll take our own programs to IND readiness, we'll move forward with demonstrating the efficacy of these multiple innovative therapeutics, and we'll continue our business development activities to bring in licenses and potentially sales. So thank you again for your time today.
That's great. AJ and Stephen,
Thank you.
thank you once again for updating investors. Could I please ask investors on this call not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. This may take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure it'll be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of ROQUEFORT Therapeutics PLC, I'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.